Welcome to Talking Grit, a Detroit Lions podcast. Talking Grit is brought to you by the Monroe County Reporters, Monroe's top news source for police, fire, and community events.
Depot Street, truck boy intercept.
Follow them on Facebook, and for $2.99 a month, you can become a subscriber and get the news you crave even faster.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Talking Grit. I'm Jason Harwood, and Jacob Litton is here as well. It's Week 17. The Lions are going to be on Monday Night Football. We're going back to the scene of the crime, the NFC Championship game. Jacob and I are going to preview that matchup as we always do every week. But first, let's take care of a couple things. Jacob, from your camera, I'm seeing a couple Lions things for Christmas. Is that all you got back there, or did you get any other cool Lions gifts?
People know me, right? They know what to get. So from work, my Secret Santa gift was a Lions blanket, which I really needed. I don't have my own blanket, so that was cool. And then Milo from Secret Santa Shop got me a Lions flag, so that's back here too.
That's cool.
So yeah, two awesome Lions things I can display while we're recording on here.
That's awesome.
What about you? What did you get?
Well, first, I want to tell you, I was afraid to tell you this before, but my Lion socks, my Lucky Lion socks or whatever, have a hole in them. And so I was worried about what I was going to do. I have a backup pair, but my wife came through 2 more pairs of Lion socks. So we're good to go for definitely through the playoffs. I'll be wearing those on game day.
We also got Talking Grit socks, right? Remember? That was also from work, yeah.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. My wife framed up a nice picture for my podcasting room of a picture of us at Ford Field. So that'll be awesome. Jacob, I sent you this picture, but I'm going to tell everybody that my son Preston got an awesome picture. It's like a poster board size picture of J-Mo hurdling the Bears defender on Thanksgiving Day. When I opened it up, I almost wanted to, before I wrapped it up, almost wanted to steal it because it was so awesome. Put it in my room here. So I might have to get something similar, maybe not the exact same picture for this podcasting room, but he got it from Fanatics Online. My wife found it, loved it. He wanted a poster for his room, but he wanted an in-game action shot. And I can't think of too many more in-game action shots because, a spin move by Jahmyr Gibbs doesn't look cool when it's a still shot, but this hurdling looks super cool.
I wonder how Jared Goff's touchdown catch would look.
Oh.
Or Dan Skipper in the end zone.
Yeah, just barely getting over the inline. Yeah, those would all be cool. Or Penei Sewell when he stiff-armed that Bears defender to the ground.
Yeah, there you go. Right. See, all kinds of opportunities.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. So today, I got a nice text message from you. Teddy Bridgewater signed with the Lions today. You sent me that with a question mark, exclamation point. So I'm taking it you were shocked by that signing, just as I was.
Oh, yeah. When I saw that, it was just like the rumor dropped. And then within like 5 minutes, it was when I think like Schefter or somebody, like the confirmation started coming in. And then, of course, it's everywhere. But yeah, I sent it to you just like, have you heard this? Have you heard anything about this? Did I miss something? Where is this coming from? Totally unexpected. Teddy Bridgewater had a lot of success this year coaching the high school football team. They steamrolled everybody in the playoffs and won the state championship. And he figured, you know what? Not doing anything for a few months here. Might as well just go back to the NFL, right? I can do that.
Yeah. In the press conference today, they asked Dan Campbell about that. And Dan Campbell, the first thing, no one even got to the question about Hendon Hooker. He's like, this has nothing to do with Hendon and his progress. This is all about adding to our team. And essentially, I look at it as we're adding another coach to the team. We're adding another QB to get Jared Goff ready for a playoff. I mean, God forbid something would happen to Jared. Yeah, Teddy would be great to have some experience and put in there. But at this point, this late in the season, it's more about development of the team and putting someone else in that room. And it probably was going to help Hendon out too. You're going to have another quarterback on the bench during the game to point things out to Hendon as opposed to him talking to Jared later on or in the meeting room.
Absolutely. And it's not like we are literally pulling somebody off the street that hasn't been here before. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater was here with Hendon Hooker already. And outside of just the quarterback room, Teddy's a veteran presence, and he really helps the receivers and helps the team out as a whole. Yeah, I like how you said it's basically just like having another coach around, because it really is. And maybe that's what he's looking for, is a coaching opportunity in the NFL after this. And here we are, one last little ride for him as a quarterback, as a player, and then we'll see what happens next year.
Yeah, I think he wants to get a Super Bowl ring as a player, so this is going to be his opportunity. And Dan Campbell in the press conference today said, I've been in contact with Teddy for a while, so I think that this has been in the work. I had seen some rumors from Schefter before that Bridgewater was going to look to get back in the NFL after his season ended, his coaching season ended. I was like, where would it make sense for him to go? And the Lions were one of them, but it was like, are we going to take up a roster spot for that? But it's kind of probably working out well because we're getting some of our players back. I know we're going to have to add some to the roster, but we have just a lot of, we cut Quan Alexander today. I'm assuming that there might be some other cuts coming when we get Jalen Reeves-Maybin back on the roster and add them back to the active roster. There might be some more cuts, but the Lions figured that this was important enough to put him on the active roster. So
that's the interesting part of this, is you have to sign him to the active roster. We can't do anything with Hooker, so now we have 3 quarterbacks on the active roster. We are injury riddled already. We've been these spots. How many people have been shuffling around on the practice squad and everything? Some people are active some week and they're not. That's the most interesting part of all of this, is that we valued having that third quarterback and having Teddy in the room over having, one of these extra linebackers or extra edge spots. Just because you already mentioned the Quan Alexander thing, but the linebacker room as a whole, Dan Campbell says that Jerm may be able to come back this week. The clock's already been going on him, so we still have a couple weeks. But we released Quan Alexander. We signed Deron Gilbert back to the practice squad. So Gilbert's the one that's from Detroit. He was here with us in the preseason. He had the injury settlement before the season started, but we also, just 2 days ago, we cut linebacker David Long. The idea was to cut him and put him on the practice squad. He was claimed by the Titans. Now today, news broke, I don't know if you saw that, they filled his physical with the Titans. So that's off. So I don't know where that leaves him. You would think the Lions probably want to keep him back on the practice squad, but now do we have room? What do we do with Gilbert, who just got here? There's also the rumors that when we cut Quan, that the idea was to hopefully keep Quan on the practice squad. Quan Alexander doesn't play special teams, so that would just be for linebacker purposes. Dan Campbell also says Anzalone's getting close. The exact quote was like, he said, I don't know about this week, but it's getting close. So you would think that means next week, which was kind of what the idea was all along. He hasn't practiced yet, but there's just been a really interesting shuffle of the linebacker room. And now we have one less spot to work with because we have an extra quarterback.
Yeah. I'm going to trust the Lions on this. That roster spot is just more valuable to have experience back there. I mean, they also credited Teddy Bridgewater with the maturity of JMO too. And
right.
So, I mean, it's not just helping the quarterback room. I think he just helps the whole team in general. And he's going to do things off the field. He's going to work with the wide receivers off the field, even some of the people that maybe are on the back end of the roster. So it's a good signing all the way around. It's an interesting signing, unexpected for sure, and especially adding to the practice roster. Now, with having him on the active roster, it basically means we're going to be able to activate one of our, either Hendon or Teddy. Probably Teddy's going to be our emergency backup, I would assume, at least for the first 2 weeks. Maybe playoffs, maybe they play this a little different because I've been with the team. Hopefully by our first playoff game, 3 weeks, because given the bye, if that happens. So I could see him maybe being the emergency quarterback, Teddy the emergency quarterback in case Hendon gets hurt. That gives you basically an extra active person on the roster. So we'll see how it goes, but that's the way I think it's going to play out.
Yeah, really interesting. I mean, we'll find out. Hopefully we don't have to. Hopefully it doesn't come to them having to play.
Yeah, no. It's all coaching right now. We don't have to worry about that because Jared's going to get us through all the way to February. All right, Jacob. This is this matchup, when we did our scheduling podcast way back when, that was like our second episode ever. This was this upcoming matchup. This was the one that we both looked forward to, right? I mean, this is when season had started. We were just like, could be for the number 1 NFC seed. Kind of is, except for it's just us, the Lions, looking for the number one NFC seed, not the 49ers. So my question for you, does this matchup still hold weight for you? Are you still excited for this matchup, even though the 49ers really have nothing to play for? And depending on the Vikings game, we may or may not, this game might count for anything. If the Vikings end up winning, then it really has no playoff implications at all.
I will say it holds some weight. Obviously, it's going to be different if the Vikings were to lose, and then we know this is for the number one seed. Then it gets way more interesting. But, you're right. For us to have, before the season, this was the one that we circled on the calendar, premier matchup late in the season. But now it's just kind of another game for the 49ers. They're out of the playoffs. They don't really have anything to fight for other than it just being as their last home game of the season. So they don't have a whole lot riding on it. But, if you're Dan Campbell and the Lions, you still have to get revenge from last year, right? Especially, it's been less than a year. You're back in San Fran. We have the NFC Championship game and everything. We really need to put that behind us. There's only one way to really shake that loss, and it's to come in here and get a win this week. And Dan Campbell's already said, regardless of what happens, because I know they asked if the Vikings were to win and this game doesn't matter, are we playing it differently? Are we resting anybody? Absolutely not. We're giving everything we have in San Fran. We're coming to win the game.
Could be time to exercise some demons. Might be similar to the Cowboys outlook, where that game, once we got rolling, we weren't letting up because
I hope it looks like that.
Yeah, we wanted to make a statement. So maybe on Monday Night Football, Lions play well in prime time. So yeah, it still holds weight for me just because of my own bad memories of how I felt after that game and how I still feel after that game, that of how close we were. At least we're not on the other end of it, right, Jacob? At least we're not the ones that are out of the playoffs and we're going back to the 49ers. I mean, how bad would you feel at that point, knowing that our season's over and now we have to go back to this 49ers team that knocked us out of the playoffs, knocked us out of the Super Bowl, where, and we have every right to almost be that way with all the injuries that we've had, right? I mean, we would have the ultimate excuse. We lost Hutch. We did all this. But that's kind of what makes this all special, is that we fought through all this. The 49ers have had their share of injuries this year, but they're fourth in their division. We're still number one in ours, and hopefully we get the number one seed. So it's interesting from that fact, just to see how the two teams are different from year to year. But yeah.
Right. Well, so this year, the 49ers have 16 players on IR. So where the Lions have been able to overcome this injury bug, the 49ers really have not. They have not looked good. They haven't been the same. It's different players injured from week to week and everything. They've got the whole McCaffrey thing going on. Of the 22 starters in last season's NFC Championship game for the Lions, of the 22 starters, 12 of them are going to be different this year.
Okay.
And then you look at the 49ers, of the 22 starters the 49ers had, 10 of them are different.
Okay.
So there's 22 out of 44 total starters on both sides that are going to be different players this year. So this matchup looks completely different. And obviously there's a lot less riding on this than there was last year. So it just looks like a different game.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. But the players that were here last year that lost in the NFC Championship game, they're going to remember that, right? I mean,
yes.
That's still going to hold weight for them. So, yeah, again, for me, it's disappointing from the fact that it'd be great to be a heavyweight battle. And I'm not taking anything from the 49ers. When we get to their rankings, they're still a solid football team. Their record doesn't show it, and I have some thoughts of why that is. But they're not a pushover team. They could still come in and win. Their defense is largely back that they've had from injuries. It's their offense that's lost some pretty key pieces. So we'll just have to take advantage of that. But you ready to get on to impact players?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. I'm going to let you hit off the offense for the 49ers here, Jacob.
All right. Impact players for the offense. This is only going to be including the players that we're going to see this week because they have quite a few impact players that are not going to be there with them. Tight end George Kittle is actually ranked number 1 out of 78 on Pro Football Focus. He was number 14 on the NFL Top 100. Quarterback Brock Purdy is the number 10 rated quarterback on Pro Football Focus. He was number 28 on Top 100. Wide receiver Deebo Samuel was number 30 on the NFL Top 100. Pro Football Focus right now has him rated number 43 out of 130. I'll get into that later. Deebo's not had a very good year. But their other receiver, Jawan Jennings, he's ranked number 11 out of Pro Football Focus, and he's actually been very consistent for them this year and has really stepped up where Brandon Ayuk used to be.
Yep. Yeah, I was surprised to see Jawan Jennings. I know he's had a consistent year, but yeah, he's ranked way up there. Debo's had, I would say, an off year for him. Probably losing Brandon Ayuk has affected that a little bit because more of the focus, and definitely not having Christian McCaffrey. You're losing two major weapons, and defense can reshift their focus away from those two players. So I'm sure that's affected Debo. As far as defensive back players, they got Fred Warner. Everyone knows him. He is a menace. He's one of the best linebackers in the game. You got Nick Bosa, awesome edge. Again, another top player on the edge. And D Winters is their other linebacker. So their linebacker core is very good. And when you look at their stats for intermediate passing, they're one of I think they might be the top ranked team for defending the intermediate pass. And it's probably because of those linebackers. They're just that good. So Jared Goff likes to throw in that area. So that'll be a tough matchup for us, for the Lions in that game. Anything you want to add on their impact defensive players, Jacob?
No, just if we're going to talk about the linebackers just real quick, I want to point out because they had Dre Greenlaw, who was an impactful player. He got hurt in the Super Bowl last year. He just came back a couple weeks ago. He was they called it fatigue or maybe a calf strain or something like that. And because the 49ers were eliminated, they've decided to just shelf him for the last couple games. So they're not even risking it with him. So that's one less linebacker we have to worry about. And then Devondre Campbell, who actually was playing pretty well in his absence, is the one that quit on the team, refused to go in, so we don't have to worry about him either.
Yeah, we'll get to that later on. I got some questions for you about quitting on the team. As far as the 49ers, we kind of already talked about it. They're out of the playoff race. They're 6-9. They're fourth in the NFC. They've lost 5 out of their last 6. And they had a couple big blowout losses against the Packers and the Bills. Their only win in the last 6 have come against the Bears. And that was the week after they had fired Eberflus. They had an ugly loss to the Rams, 6-12. And then the most recent losses to the Dolphins, 17-29, whereas the Dolphins had stuff to play for. 49ers, as we talked, they're pretty much eliminated. So it hasn't gone the 49ers' way. But you know what, next year, Jacob, they're gonna probably finish 4th in the NFC West. So they're gonna have the 4th place schedule. And they'll be back. They will be back next year, and that's gonna only benefit them having the 4th place schedule. So you might want to, depending on what the over-under next year for the 49ers, probably bet the over if Vegas has them low, because they're going to probably have an easier schedule. All right, Jacob. We're used to having the longest injury report, right? At least recent history. It doesn't look like it this week. We're getting some reinforcements back. The 49ers injury report was very long. Just to hit on that, Trent Williams is going to be out for the rest of the season. So just like Drake Greenlaw, they basically shelved Trent Williams. He's not recovering as fast, and since they have nothing to play for, it's probably just in Trent's best interest and the 49ers' best interest to shelve them. So they're going to be losing out on Trent Williams. But they also have 3 other offensive linemen that did not practice: Aaron Banks, Robert Beal Jr., and Spencer Buford. So they are beat up on the offensive line. Not to mention that McCaffrey's out. Mason, their primary backups out. Looks like they might get Isaac Guerrero back. He was a limited practice today, so we'll see how that goes. So he might be their starting back. That'll be interesting. Jair Brown, safety, limited practice. Leonard Floyd on the defensive line, limited practice. Colton McKivitch, offensive line, he was limited practice. They had a bunch of players that had a full practice, so they must have some sort of injury going, but it's Tatum Bethune, Nick Bosa, Jordan Elliott. I don't know how to say that. Hufunga, the safety.
Hufunga.
Yeah, well, I like it. Nice. And then D Winters has got a full practice in. So their list is quite extensive. It's the offensive line that's going to be hurting them, which is not going to be good for Brock Purdy, which is going to be great for the Lions. All right. What about our injury report, Jacob? Who showed up on ours?
Yeah, much smaller injury report for us. Terrion Arnold actually did not practice. They're calling that due to an illness. Hopefully that's just a stomach bug or something like that just kept him out and that he'll be okay. David Montgomery's still not practicing because of the knee injury. That's expected. But we got a full practice out of Graham Glasgow. He's going to be back. Dan Kimball's already said he's slotting right back in the starting spot. Khalif Raymond got on a full practice. They've started the window for him. And then we already mentioned Jalen Reeves-Maven, another full practice. The window's open. We're really hoping that he'll be activated and he'll be able to play this week. But we'll see.
I'm hoping Jalen Reeves-Maven back. We need some more. I mean, just special teams alone, he's dynamite on that. But in the linebacker room, we need our players back. So hopefully we get him back, and then maybe next week or the first game of the playoffs, we get Alex back. It's going to make a world of difference having those two guys back. Jalen Reeves-Maven could cover in the secondary, so I'm excited for that just alone. Might not hurt this week, but we get to Philadelphia, we're going to need someone that can cover a back out of the backfield.
Yes. That's actually what I was just going to bring up is Germ's been very valuable in special teams, but with everything the way that it stands right now, if he comes back, don't you think he's primarily going to be just playing on the defensive side and that we're going to kick someone like Zeke Turner over to special teams more?
The Lions will probably do that, especially he has Jalen Reeves-Maven hasn't played in a little bit, so I'm sure he's going to take a little bit to get his wind back. So they're probably not going to want him playing double duty over there.
Right.
We get to the playoffs, all bets are off how they're going to play that. They might just go to the wall and just do what they need to do to win. This week, if he does come back, yeah, I think it'd be one or the other. He probably won't be playing both. And I'm going to imagine they're going to want him at linebacker just with the injuries, everything being there.
Right.
That's my bet.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the Niners rankings this year. When I went through this, I was actually really surprised where they were ranked in some of these categories because based on the record, I was expecting them to be much worse. But PFF has them overall rated tied for the seventh team in the NFL,
And how does that make sense? 6-9 out of the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't know. But when you look at their stats, I can kind of see it. So PFF has ranked as fourth rated offense. They're 15th in points scored, but they're 8th in yards per game. That equates to 7th in passing and 11th in rushing. So their offense has been moving the ball, but they're not scoring points, which tells me that they're probably not getting it done in the red zone. And they've had some turnovers, and that's probably ending drives right there. So that could be when we get to keys of the game. You bet I'm going to be pointing to that for sure. How's their defense look, Jacob?
Just real quick, speaking of the offense, I think that also that's maybe skewed a little bit because after their bye week, they had a really good game against the Buccaneers where they won. And then it's just like their offense fell flat against the Seahawks, the Packers, the Bills. They had obviously that really good game against the Bears, but then they tanked again against the Rams. So I think those numbers have to be because of what happened at the beginning of the season and less of late.
Yeah.
As far as offense goes. So defense, Pro Football Focus has them rated. They're tied for 13th total defense. They're 18th in points scored, but they are actually second in yards per game on defense. It breaks down their third in pass defense and 15th in rushing in terms of yards per game. So really good pass defense, but for some reason, even with those great linebackers, teams have been able to rush on them.
And I just think it's interesting. You look at all these yards per game and all that, but the points scored, and we've talked about it before, you've got to score more points than the other team to win. And when you're giving up points and you're not scoring yourself, it's a hard combination. And there's a lot of things can lead to that. But yeah, I was just surprised with how good their pass defense was. I was really surprised that their rush defense was ranked so low. Their defense as a whole is bringing back most of their starters are mostly healthy. So I just found that very interesting. Just thought they'd be better at the run. All right. Jacob. So usually we'd have a 49ers writer on. We'd go through we'd interview them, ask questions. With Christmas week, I didn't even bother reaching out to a 49ers writer because I figured the scheduling was going to be too much. So Jacob and I thought we would just do our own 49ers questions, stuff that interests us as Lions fans from afar, or in the case of the first question, as Michigan fans. So Jake Moody has been kind of rocky from afar seeing him. So would you rather have him or Jake Bates right now, Jacob?
Oh, I think right now you'd have to want Jake Bates, right? Just in terms of how they've done this year. Obviously Moody, Michigan man and everything, higher draft pick for a kicker. I really wanted Moody to do well. And even though I don't like the 49ers, it still pains me every time Moody misses a kick. I'm like, oh man, like I just wanted him to get it. I want him to do well, even though I don't want the team to do well. So the fact that he's been struggling, and it's just been really weird. He was so consistent in college, and for the inconsistency to be happening, the support of the team obviously isn't helping either. I don't know if you saw the argument, Debo taking a shot at him and the long snapper and everything earlier in the year after a miss. Yeah, he's in a high pressure situation with the team right there, and he's been crumbling.
Yeah. I think when I look at him, Jake Moody, it is, when he came out of college, Lions had an iffy kicker situation at the time. I thought he would slot right in, and I was hoping we would draft him. Not in the third round like the 49ers did. I think that also complicates his history with the 49ers too, because you're spending a high draft pick, and you're expecting Justin Tucker level kicking when I would assume if you're picking someone that high. So that's been kind of disappointing. I agree with you. It does hurt me when he misses a kick. However, a lot of times I'm kind of, because of the situation between the 49ers and Lions the last couple of years, I've been wanting him to miss kicks just because it'll help the Lions, but it does still hurt my feelings when he loses because Michigan, man, I want him to do good. But yeah, I think the question is Jake Bates is our Jake. Yeah, I'm glad that we have him on our team. Yeah, and he's kind of just like, he's played outside of that one really bad miss a couple weeks ago. He's been everything I wanted in a kicker. Clutch, can hit the long kick, does well on kickoffs, does everything we need to do on my kickoffs. So yeah, he's been what we needed.
Yeah, I mean, for Moody, it's just anytime a kicker is drafted in the first 3 rounds, you're just destined for failure.
Yeah,
there's too much pressure to be drafted that high. When you're drafted later, like kickers normally are, or when you're undrafted, I guess the downside of that is that the leash is so much shorter. Because for Jake Bates, if he started the year off and missed a couple kicks the first couple weeks, he wouldn't be here anymore. It's been very easy for them to just kick him off and get somebody else. But for the 49ers to have drafted him as high as they did, they kind of have to ride this one out. And in his defense, Moody's also had injuries, I think, both years. So maybe that's got something to do with it. I think some of his misses were also in like cold weather climates, so who knows if it's the holds or whatever. There may be a reason, but to be drafted that high, you want more consistency.
Yeah. Shanahan said today, I listened to his press conference, he said that Jake Moody's dealing with a high ankle sprain on his kicking foot. So that's probably dealing with some of the misses recently. You got to be available, right? I mean, if you're a kicker and you're constantly hurt or you're not able to play, that's not good either. So, and I don't watch 49ers football enough to know like how often he's missing or whatever. But you're right. It's his saving grace is that he was drafted in the third round, because otherwise kickers they're given the heave ho really quickly if they miss a couple kicks or don't make them in the clutch or whatever.
Right.
All right, Jacob. This is an interesting question for you. Will Brock Purdy be the starting quarterback for the 49ers next year?
I believe so. Right? I mean, I don't know if they'd be looking to move on from him. I think that he, especially this year, with the injuries and everything that have happened, they're kind of asking him to make something out of nothing right now, and he's been playing well. I don't know. Obviously, he's Mr. Irrelevant. He was the last pick in the draft and everything. Maybe you draft somebody in the middle rounds or whatever and just see what you have in somebody else also. The interesting thing is just the contract situation, right? I mean, like, is he going to be demanding top 5 money? Are you really going to break the bank for him? That, I don't know that it'd be warranted. It's tough because I also did not think that Jordan Love was going to be breaking records for his contract, and sure enough, they gave him that money. So if you're the 49ers, do you really pay Brock Purdy that much, or do you? It's tough. I still think he's going to be the quarterback of the 49ers next year, but there's a lot of dominoes to fall here. What are your thoughts?
I have 2 thoughts. So just that when you talked about the contract, he signed next year. He's signed for $1.1 million. He's an unrestricted free agent after that. So, I mean, $1.1 million, incredibly cheap, right? I mean, you're not going to get much better deal than that. However, there may be where you have a good deal. Kirk Cousins, he is going to possibly be cut by the Falcons by all accounts. That's what's rumored to happen. He would sign a veteran minimum contract because the Falcons would still be on the hook. So you got a Russell Wilson situation. He has a connection with Kyle Shanahan. You could have a really cheap quarterback room and having Kirk Cousins and Brock Purdy. I mean, whether Kirk Cousins wants to go there and compete with Brock Purdy, I don't know. But wouldn't that be interesting? That's my thought.
That's an excellent take. But you're right. Kirk Cousins, is he coming here with the idea that he's going to be the backup, but he's possibly competing for a starting spot? Is he okay with just coming here as a backup? Are they going to tell him that he's going to be the starter and then they're going to bench Brock Purdy? They also would be able to have more leverage in a contract situation, I guess, if they're going to put Kirk Cousins as starter and then tell Brock Purdy, I don't know, they're going to try to skimp him out and tell him to find more money elsewhere then. That's very interesting. I could see that happening, though.
Well, here's the thing. If you get Kirk Cousins there, right, it protects you from a Jordan Love situation where Brock Purdy says, well, I'm just not going to practice. I'm going to sit out and you're going to sign me this big contract. They could say, well, we got Mr. Cousins over here. We're going to pay him about what we're paying you. It might give them some insurance on that. So I could see that would happen. I don't know. It's all a long shot, but I've seen crazy stuff happen where these things come out of the woodwork. But I just think Kirk Cousins' connection with Kyle Shanahan, the unique situation that Kirk Cousins is going to be in where he's not going to be looking for big money because Atlanta's already paying him. And essentially, there's no advantage to a team signing him for more unless I don't even know what else they could give. I mean, I guess they could try to out-sign him from Atlanta, but no one's going to give Kirk Cousins that kind of money. So I could see that. Just a unique situation that come up. The other one that I could see that is more of a long shot for me, but Sam Darnold going back to the 49ers.
Yeah, right.
He's going to be up. They could. It just depends. I mean, Brock Purdy, I wouldn't say that he's played bad this year, but it's looming that they're going to have to pay him. And whether they feel that he's going to be necessarily worth $50-some million, that's to be seen. I mean, they can always franchise him, but then you got a lame duck quarterback situation, and that's not good for team morale. So kind of interesting situation to monitor next offseason for sure.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, I've heard that too about Sam Darnold possibly going back to the 49ers or going back to the Jets. But if you're Sam Darnold, don't you just want to take it to them or whatever and kind of let them? Just seems weird to me if he would want to go back there and make more money and try to do that again. After all the stuff the fans have said about him from those teams and how his experiences went with both of those, that's just weird to me for the Sam Darnold thing. I definitely could see Kirk Cousins, and you're right about the holdout thing. It almost, if they don't have a different quarterback on the roster, it almost inevitably is going to be a holdout situation.
Mm-hmm.
But then you also have to figure, are they really going to budge? Are they really going to pay him top dollar? Because I just don't feel like he's worth it.
Yeah, I don't know. But a quarterback puts you in that situation. But I think having the insurance on there would help save them money in the long run. If Kirk Cousins can get a guaranteed starting job somewhere else, all bets are off.
Right.
Team, I think that's ultimately probably going to be Kirk Cousins' game, is to get a starting job somewhere because he's going to want to play. Whereas if he goes to 49ers, who knows how that's going to work out. But Kirk Cousins didn't exactly light it up in Atlanta this year, so I don't know how many people are going to be lining up for Kirk Cousins either. So we'll see.
Well, but you also have a Russell Wilson type thing too, where it's like, hey, now you can sign him for minimum dollar, and he did not play very well. He did not have a very good year in Denver, and he's actually been playing really well here in Pittsburgh. So It is about the scheme and it is about the situation. And if the dollar amount is right, then you absolutely, if you have a starting spot, would be able to bring Kirk Cousins in.
Yeah. Wherever he goes, it's going to be interesting because I think there's the contract situation opens up to a lot of possibilities that normally wouldn't be there. I think Minnesota's still in a realm of possibilities for like a 1-year deal. Because Kirk Cousins could try to parlay that into a bigger contract if he has a good year with Minnesota. Who knows? I don't know his relationship since he left, if it's still good with Minnesota or if it soured or whatever. But
yeah, that's another thing, like the Darnold thing. Like I don't see coming back to a team like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I have a very broad question for you now. What do you think happened to the 49ers this year? Why do you think that they had the downfall they did?
I expected them to have a better year. We already mentioned it. They had the injuries happen. We had the injuries happen, and we've been on the right side of that, and they've been on the wrong side. Who knows if that comes down to coaching or if that's just the players that they have that they're left with. We already mentioned Debo has not had a very good year, and he doesn't really seem like the type of person to put the team on his back and try to show them like leadership qualities and everything like that. And Brock Purdy's also very quiet. I don't know what type of leader he is in the locker room, but it just doesn't seem like they've had anybody step up and take charge with the offense. And they really needed to turn it on after their bye week so that they could stay in. And they fell flat in the worst way possible against the Packers and Bills and all those games that they've had since. And the Dolphins game last week, kind of just the icing on the cake. They just couldn't get anything going. And now here they are out of the playoffs looking towards next year.
Yeah, for me, this goes all the way back to training camp. The whole Brandon Ayuk sitting out. They had Trent Williams sitting out. They were in the Super Bowl, so they've already had a short off season. And then you have turmoil in the locker room. And then the Christian McCaffrey got hurt. And I just think that just the locker room probably turned sour. I mean, you had a player, we mentioned it earlier, a player quit on that team, would refuse to go into the game. That doesn't scream good locker room for me. And whether that's the leadership that you mentioned, whether that's the coaching, or just, hey, we're losing and I'm just not happy or whatever. So when you look at a team like the Lions, they signed all their players, everyone's at training camp, everyone's showing up. The Lions have had more injuries than 49ers, fought through them, whereas the 49ers just had a dud of a season, and it just seems like the players aren't as bought in. And so when you have those injuries coupled with players not willing to step up and do their part, this is, I think, what happens. So I think that, not blaming anyone individually, I just think that the way the team was constructed or whatever, it just lends to that. Lions don't have that problem, but it seems like the 49ers did this year. Not saying the Lions will have it in the future. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? It can turn real fast, but from afar, just looks like an unhappy locker room.
Yes. I would say that's fair.
A lot of people looking out for number one and whatever, and the team just not taking care of their players as well as they could. Now, my other question, we just mentioned the kind of the coaching. I want to talk to you about Kyle Shanahan. So I have some stats, 70-60 with the 49ers, which before I saw that, I would have expected a better record. He started out the first couple of years were bad. Then he goes to the Super Bowl. Then he has the follow-up year. That's pretty bad. That was an injury-riddled year, similar to what they're experiencing this year and similar to what the Lions
history
had.
is repeating itself.
Yeah, it's just, this has happened before. But an interesting stat that I'd read, in one-score games, Kyle Shanahan's record is .378. So he doesn't seem to win a lot of the close games, and that kind of goes hand in hand with what's happened in the Super Bowl, right, for him. So what is your thoughts on Kyle Shanahan? And, I'm assuming you think he's going to be there next year, but what are your thoughts on Kyle Shanahan?
Yeah, that's something else that was interesting, too, is they talked about him possibly leaving or being traded out of there, finding a way for him to get out of San Fran, too. But, he's had a lot of success. They haven't won the Super Bowl, but they've been to the Super Bowl twice. They've been to the NFC. They lost the NFC Championship game a couple times, too. They had quite the run the last couple of years. They've been consistently on top with decent records and everything. I definitely think he's still going to be the head coach next year there if he wants to be. And I don't see any reason why he would want to bounce, especially when you've got McCaffrey coming back. You've got the offense. It's just a down year for them. Like we said, history repeated itself. They had a down year the last time the Chiefs took them out in the Super Bowl. It seems to be going. Maybe they're going to go on another run and be the top team again for the next couple of years, but I also don't think, if you look at Kyle Shanahan, I mean, he's one of the younger coaches, right? Like, he's still not that old. He still has a lot going for him. His coaching pedigree, the people that he's coached under and everything that he's got, you're not going to find any upgrade, I don't think. There's nothing in it for the 49ers to let him go because of this season, right? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he's going to be there, but I also think this is a overall warning for Lions fans that you can have a pretty good coach, which I think Kyle Shanahan is, and you could have some down years. And this is what happens if you don't have a solid locker room. One thing I think is Dan Campbell's superpower is getting everyone to buy in. And I'm not saying that Kyle Shanahan hasn't got his team to buy in, but this is if you don't get the right players in there, and that can be just as much on the GM as the coach. If you don't get that team mentality, things could fall apart in a hurry. Lions haven't lost back-to-back games since that 1-6 start. They just haven't back-to-back games in a while, and this is a sign of a team that's together and can win. But the caveat is you could have the injuries in the right spot. Their offense was predicated around McCaffrey, and they lost that.
Right.
I'd be similar to us losing Goff, in my opinion. And so some of those injuries are going to just be hard to overcome. But that's what makes what happened with the Lions so miraculous. We lost Hutch, who's essentially Jared Goff on that side of the ball. And until the injuries started to really pile up, our defense was still ranked number 1 in the league. So that's where I think Dan Campbell shines above a lot of other coaches. I think Kyle Shanahan will be there next year, but he has had some down seasons. He's seemed to be able to handle adversity as well as Dan Campbell's teams have, at least recently.
Right. I will also say that from their, I know the 49ers don't have an offensive coordinator, but I mean, their coordinator positions and stuff like that, I don't think that those coaches are necessarily as strong as ours, right? And that's what we've got going for us right now, is the same coaching staff for the last couple of years also.
Yeah. Well, we also, 49ers keep losing coaches because they keep winning.
Right.
And Lions are going to experience that soon enough and possibly this offseason. So we'll see how we recover from losing a coach here and there. But I think part of what 49ers, why they do that, is they have some consistency as moving up coaches and just a consistent philosophy. So the players can buy into that. I think the Lions will have that similar thing. If we lose AG, then we bring Shep up, and he's going to have a similar type of philosophy as AG, learning under him. We'll see how that goes, but that's an interesting point you brought up about the assistant coaches and stuff like that.
Before we get the keys of victory, I just have a couple interesting things that have come up just about the Lions, just so we can talk about our own team again. I don't know if you saw these, but just some things I want to go over. The Lions are the only team in the NFL to have a running back with 1,000 rush yards and 10 touchdowns, and a receiver with 1,000 receiving yards and 10 touchdowns. And that's Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs. Gibbs has at least 70 scrimmage yards in every game this season. It's the first time it's been done since David Johnson in 2016. And he also tied Barry Sanders' record for longest streak in team history. And then outside of that, he also joins Barry Sanders and Billy Sims as the only running backs in franchise history to produce a season with 1,500 scrimmage yards and 15 touchdowns. Who's laughing about the Gibbs pick now, right?
Yeah, exactly. Great point. Yeah. I still flashbacks to being at Ford Field when that pick was made. I was there
right.
draft night, and people were mad. Walking up in the aisle going, this is why we are the way we are. And yeah, and I was surprised by the pick. I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt until they're proven wrong, and I'm glad I did, because Brett Holmes looks like a genius right now.
Right. Yeah, no, when that pick happened, I didn't have that on my draft board. There was the outside chance we were thinking about Bijan, like maybe if we're going to go running back, if we've got the high, and then we trade back and everything, and then for it to be Gibbs, like, okay, what do they see? What do they see in this guy? And now we see what they saw, right? That's why we don't make the decisions. A lot of fans, the same people that were like, this is why we are the way we are, those are the people that probably have Gibbs jerseys on.
Yeah, I agree. I think I made the comment, I don't know if I was a comment to you or my buddy Paul, one of the two. I just said, when he has a 70-yard touchdown, everyone's thoughts are going to change. I didn't think it'd take a season and a half to get the 70-yard touchdown, but yeah, he changed people's minds really quick. So yeah.
Right. And then Amon-Ra, he was the other part of that statistic. He joined Larry Fitzgerald as the only player in NFL history with multiple seasons of 100-plus receptions, 100-plus receiving yards, and 10-plus touchdowns within the first 4 years of a player's career. So suck on that, Jamar Chase.
Yeah. One of those players was drafted in the first round, and one of those players was drafted in the fourth round. Larry Fitzgerald, one of the all-time greats, but yeah. I mean, when you talk about value per pick, Amon-Ra,
unbelievable.
Way up there. All right. I'm going to start out with my keys to victory. It's actually going to include Amon-Ra. So my key to victory is remember last year. Just remember how we felt at the end of last year. And Amon-Ra basically said that. He goes, it's one of the worst losses of his career. And I feel like they're going to come right out and have that feeling and have something to prove, even though, like you said, a lot of the starters are different. The team situations are different. They're going to remember being out there. It was earlier this year. It hasn't even been a full calendar year since we've walked out that field as not going to the Super Bowl after being up by 17. So they're going to remember that, and that's all they got. Not that they need additional motivation, but that's all they need right there is remember last year.
Right. First key to victory I have is just don't let Brock Purdy scramble. We saw it last year. It's been the same thing this year where he's not a run-first quarterback, but he has the ability to extend plays and convert those crucial third downs, which happened at some really bad times last year late in the game. We were able to sack him twice and cause him to throw a pick with pressure, so hopefully we're able to do that again. We can send Iffy and Branch a few times like we did last week, disguise some different looks so he doesn't see where the pressure is coming from, because he will make some mistakes, but you can't let him scramble around and create that extra time. And our linebackers just really need to be prepared to step up if he scrambles. And that's where it would be helpful if Jerm plays and that we don't have to have Zeke Turner or Ben Neiman out there to make those plays.
Yep. Yeah, Purdy's rushed for 311 yards. This is actually one of my keys to victory, too. So he's rushed for 311 yards. He's rushed more this year than he has in the past, probably because of the injuries on offense and the offensive line is breaking down. So he's just had to escape more to just keep the offense moving. We need to keep the pressure on Brock Purdy. Like you said, we got him for a couple sacks last year. He did throw a pick on us. He struggled in the last game when Dolphins got pressure on him. So we just need to keep that up. And it may be easier because of the offensive line injuries that we talked about earlier.
Yes, hopefully. I mean, and just if we're going to talk about that again real quick, the injuries, if they're looking towards next year, I think they got 2 of their starting offensive linemen that are healthy right now. The other ones, are they really fighting the play? Are they trying to hold them out to be safe? Or are they trying to protect Brock Purdy? It's going to be interesting to see whether they actually play or not. And that goes for Nick Bosa also. He got a full practice in and everything. Is Nick Bosa going to play? If he plays, is he going to be giving 110%? Because that's kind of where he differs from Aiden Hutchinson, is I feel like he does not go necessarily as hard as Hutch does on most of those plays. And in a game where nothing matters, maybe he ramps it up on third downs, but outside of that, was he just out there going through the motions, trying not to get hurt? So that'll be interesting too. On defense, key to victory I have is just limiting Debo and Kittle. Debo has had a really down year. Other than the week that they played the Vikings, he's been very ineffective without Ayuk drawing defenses away. Juwan Jennings, though, has been able to kind of capitalize on that and has been having a pretty good year. Debo still has big playability, so you have to account for him at all times, but yeah, has been really average, I would say, this year. I know maybe he's got 2 games where he's had more than 100 yards, and the one game he had like an 80-yard touchdown or something. So really, outside of the one game, he hasn't played very well. And that's somebody else that's like, it doesn't seem like he's really got a whole lot of leadership qualities. It just seems like he even said earlier, a few weeks ago, that I need to be touching the ball more. So then they gave him plenty of touches, and he still finished with like 40 yards or something like that. It's just not ideal part of the team. But then you've got George Kittle, who Kittle doesn't have any games with double-digit catches, but it's more about the impact for him and less about the volume. And Kittle is tough to cover. He's tough in all aspects of the game. He's just a really good, complete tight end. But I'm really interested to see Campbell versus Kittle, to see how Campbell does in coverage against George Kittle, and also just on those blocks and everything, if Kittle's blocking him, to see how Campbell does, because he's been playing so well this year.
Yeah, Kittle's been, like you said, PFF #1 ranked tight end. He's been fairly healthy this year. That's something he hasn't had in the last couple of years. He's had some injuries. So yeah, we have to watch, along with what you said about Deebo Samuel, we have to watch him lining up in the backfield. They have been using him as a running back more, especially with the running backs being out. Similar to like a DJ Moore situation when we saw with the Bears, right, where they're just going to try to get him the ball and create matchups wherever. So you have to keep an eye on Deebo, whether the want is there and whether he's going to be playing as hard. I don't know Deebo all that well, but I just know that he hasn't had that great of a season. So for whatever reason, so we just got to keep an eye on him, because him and Kittle are the playmakers right now on their team. So you just have to keep an eye on them. We have to win the turnover battle. That goes every week. We could say that San Francisco is -5 in turnover differential, whereas the Lions are +9. I suspect that's why the San Francisco's isn't scoring as many points, is because they're turning the ball over more than they're creating turnovers. Lions just need to keep that up. That we need to take away possessions from that 49ers offense, and we just need to convert on our end. And so we're in the right position to be on the plus side of it. They're on the negative side to just keep that trend going.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the name of the game. Win the turnover battle. Also, I've got a quote here from Campbell too, which is something that I said earlier, but just about playing Detroit football. Dan Campbell, the coach, says, I wanted to see us play Detroit football and I wanted to win. That was it. I gave no other stipulations. So that's kind of just the story from here on out for sure. It doesn't matter how we win. Stick to our guns, play like we know that we can, and we'll win the football game by any means necessary. As long as we are taking care of the ball and we're effectively using our rushing attack and using that to open up the passing attack. And that's the last key to victory I have, is to feed Gibbs the ball. He's a weapon. We really unleashed him last week. He went for 154 yards. We just need to see a lot of the same. Having him as a threat to touch the ball every single time really opens up the play action. And that's where we're really dangerous, is the linebackers and safeties, when they see that handoff, they have to crash down. They have to, even if it just takes that one extra step, they have to account for that because our rushing attack is so effective. And the 49ers, for whatever reason, have been allowing like 150 plus rushing yards in like 5 of the last 6 games. They've really had teams running all over them. They've had all the issues with the linebackers, Greenlaw out. Fred Warner is as consistent as they come, but I think he's playing with like a broken hand or something like that. Like Fred Warner's been hurt all year and has still been playing. We already talked about Devondre Campbell quit on the team. He was playing well, but he's not there anymore. I think that's the recipe for success, as it has always been for us, is use that effective rushing attack to open up the play action, open up the pass, and soften up the defense, and just win by any means necessary.
I agree. So Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be is one of my keys. It's funny, all your keys were my keys, so that was interesting. It was like you were reading my document over here. But Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be a key. We got to establish the run. The 49ers are 20th against the play action in the league right now. So again, establishing the run. Play action, funny enough, works whether you're establishing the run or not, but I just feel like it can get those linebackers to bite up a little bit more. Get the intermediate passing. Like I said, they're number one in intermediate passing. We need to move those linebackers up to create passing lanes for Jared Goff so we can hit Amon-Ra, Sam Laporta, maybe J-Mo over the top or whatever. But we need some play action pass and move that up. 49ers are not effective in their run defense, so this seems like a pretty good recipe for Jahmyr to have a good game. I just have a couple more stats just to watch out for. So Lions and Jared Goff have been really good against the blitz this year. Part of it's the offensive line picking up. Part of it's just Jared Goff having the experience and know what to do. The 49ers defense is 29th when they blitz. I do not expect a lot of blitzes in this, and that's probably why their intermediate pass defense is good. The linebackers play back. They're not leaving the middle of the field open. Offense is 8th against the blitz, whereas the Lions defense is number 1 with the blitz. If we get Germ back, I expect we might be blitzing a little bit more, especially with Iffy out there. Iffy and Branch splitting that time at nickel or however they divvy that up. We'll probably blitz because getting pressure on Brock Purdy has been the key. So I expect us to blitz. We've been one of the highest teams blitzing since Hutch went down. That trend's going to continue this week as well. All right, real quickly, I want to talk real quick about the Vikings-Packers. Minnesota's favored by 1 this week. I'll be tuned into this game, Jacob. I'm assuming that you're going to be sitting on your couch watching this game as well, or do you have plans on Sunday?
No, Sunday most of the time is football day. I might be doing some other things. I'll keep an eye on it. I might have Red Zone on. I don't want to get too involved. I can't be rooting for the Packers too much. It just doesn't sit right.
We'll be watching the game. My whole family will be. Sarah, last week, like before the Lions game of the Bears, we were talking about probably have scenarios. She listened to the podcast. She goes, so what time is the Vikings-Packers game? And that was before it got moved to 4:25. I said, I think it's just a 1 o'clock game. I get home. I said, they moved that game to 4:25. She goes, I already know. So my wife is like totally in tune with what's going on. I know we'll be watching the game. I'm living my best life here, Jacob. So super happy.
Awesome.
Yeah. Packers have played really good football. It's in Minnesota, but the Minnesota's only favored by 1. Generally, the rule of thumb is the home team gets 3 points just off the bat for just being the home team. So it's almost like the Packers are favored here. So I can't believe I'm saying it, but I hope the Packers pull this one off. It should be a good game. It'll be fun to watch. I can't wait to watch it, actually.
Right? I mean, the last matchup was a 29-31 Vikings victory. Other than that loss, let's see.
That was a game that started out 28-0 too. That game started out 28-0, and then
and they came back.
Vikings fell apart in the second half. Packers came roaring back, but did just enough to win that game.
Yeah, that was week 4. And since then, the Packers' only losses have been to us. And then you got the Vikings, obviously. They've only got 2 losses all year. One of those was to us, and then the other one was the week after against the Rams. I guess this is an interesting question. Are you more scared right now of playing the Packers or the Vikings in the playoffs?
That's a really good question. I'm honestly not scared of either team, to be honest with you.
I guess that's wrong. I pulled like a Stephanie thing. Say you're not ever scared of anything at all,
Never
right? That's not Houston.
We beat the Packers twice. We've had the Vikings number the last couple of years, and I think we match up pretty well with them. I can say that I don't like that Carlton Davis is out with Justin Jefferson. I think Amik's been good out there, but you're asking a lot because Justin Jefferson's awesome. So that does scare me. We've beat the Packers twice. They're all good teams. I don't want to play any of those good teams, right? I'd rather play someone weaker.
Well, any given Sunday. I mean, any of these teams could beat any of the other teams any week. I'm not going to say that if we play a team 10 times, we're going to beat them 10 out of 10. No, I think all of these teams is closer to neck and neck. It's just with the Vikings, for me, I really have been way less impressed with the Vikings than I have the Packers. There's so many of the wins by the Vikings that have been such close calls, or they've had this will go their way, that go their way. Their defense has been pretty consistent, but their offense has not. The Bears took them to overtime. They had the really close game against the Jaguars, the Titans, pretty much up and down. They've had so many of these really close, like if you take all their one possession games and flip-flop them to losses, they would be already out of the playoffs by now.
I agree with it. Vikings had that year that they won all those games, made the playoffs, and got bounced the first year. They won all those close games, and it feels very similar to this. Like they've just lucked out and won so many close games. But there is something to say to pulling those close games out, right? I mean, to figure out how to win. I'm not saying none of that was luck, but there is some sort of skill there, just learning how to win.
Well, like us with the Texans game. I mean, you can't really. There were some things that had to go our way in that Texans game outside of just our play, and it did.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know the answer to that question. Either team is really good. The Packers probably have been playing better lately, but we've already beat the Packers twice. We'll see. We'll match up with the Minnesota, whether it'll all be on the line or nothing will be on the line in a couple weeks here. So maybe my answer might change after seeing how Justin Jefferson and Kevin O'Connell attack the Lions defense being down with injuries. Getting the playoffs, our defense is going to look a little different too, getting Alex back, Jerm back, and maybe Dave Montgomery be come back on our offense. So we'll see. I probably would lean to rather play in Minnesota, but I am scared, like I said, about our cornerback over there and then facing Justin Jefferson because there's no one like Justin Jefferson. He is just unreal.
Right.
All right. Let's get on to grit picks.
Grit picks.
Let's fly through these pretty quickly. Last week, I went 2-1. You went 1-2. I had the Chargers over the Broncos. We both picked the Bucs and the Cowboys won. And then Saints at Packers. Saints. What? That was an ugly Monday night game.
We knew it was going to look like that, right? God. I mean, I knew they didn't stand a chance. It was even worse than I thought, though.
Yeah, it looked bad. Preston was wanting to stay up and watch the game. I was like 14-0. I was like, it's over. He's like, it's not over. I go, the Saints aren't going to be able to score 14 points in this game. It is over. And yeah, they didn't end up scoring anything. So let's talk this week. We're going to pick the Thursday night football game, which is we're recording on Thursday night right now. As we're talking, it is 6-3 Seahawks. I am actually going with the Bears in this one. I texted you before the game ahead of time, Jacob, so you knew who I was picking. So if the score was different, you wouldn't be calling me a front runner or whatever. So I'm going with the Bears. Who are you taking in this one?
Yeah, you did that because you knew if by chance the Bears were up big at this point, I would have called you out and said there's no chance that you would pick them to win.
Exactly.
So yeah, you texted me that you picked them to win. Seahawks were favored by 4.5. The Bears are on a really long losing streak, so they desperately need a win. This is their last home game of the season, so they have nothing to lose. They should be going all out. But if you're the Seahawks, you still have a shot at the playoffs. So you have to win this game. Mm-hmm. The Bears are reeling right now. Nothing's going right for them. The Seahawks really have to take it to them and win. I'm picking the Seahawks to win. Although as of right now, it's just been kind of a dud, 6-3 towards the end of the third. We'll see. I think the Seahawks are going to pull it out, but if the Bears keep it close, maybe they are able to make something happen.
It's raining pretty hard right now there too, which is interesting. Seems like there's been a lot of weather games this year, either like hard rain or weather in these primetime games. All right.
Was it the Bears or the Bills? One of them was like with their new stadium proposal or whatever said that they're still not being a dome. They're still going to make it outdoors.
I thought it was
one of those two teams.
I think the Bills will always be outdoors. I don't know for sure, but I think Bears was going to get a new stadium. They got, especially being as close to the lake there. Yeah, I would think they'd want to be a dome.
Why wouldn't? Like, I mean, it just, and you should have a retractable thing. Outdoor football is cool in the Midwest until freaking December. And then you really need that dome. You need the cover. Yeah, football just, and there's always the argument like, well, the other team has to come out and play in it too. And if they're a warm weather team, maybe they'll struggle with it. But everybody struggles when it's cold. I just don't see the benefit of, maybe you're from here and you're a little more used to the cold weather. But yeah.
As we're talking, the Bears they fumbled it. They ruled it like, I don't know. They must have never blew the whistle. I don't have the sound on. Scored a touchdown. So I think it's going to be ruled down just based on my quick.
They're arguing right now. I can't tell.
Yeah, he pulled it out. It's definitely a fumble, but I think he's going to be touched, but we'll see. Anyways, let's get on to this. We're going to pick the Saturday night football game, Arizona at the Rams. Who are you picking in this one? Rams or Cardinals, Jacob?
Yeah, it's another one where Cardinals have been eliminated from the playoffs. The Rams are leading the division, but they don't have it locked up yet. The Rams are at home. They're looking for payback because the Cardinals earlier this year beat them 41-10. They smoked them earlier. So the Rams definitely have more on the line in this one. I think the Rams are going to win.
Yeah, I'm going with the Rams too. Definitely from what you said, they just have more on the line. But although it's a divisional game, there's nothing. If you're out of it, you want to make your people in your division suffer as well. So Cardinals will be on this, but yeah, I'm going to go with the Rams. Next game is a game that was flexed into Sunday Night Football. This one's got some playoff implications for sure. Atlanta at the Commanders. Commanders did us some help last week, taking out the Eagles. So maybe we're rooting for them just because of that. Atlanta is, because of the Bucs loss to the Cowboys, they're now the front runner for the NFC South, which could have some playoff implications too about who we face and when we face them. So interesting. I'm going to take Atlanta in this one. Although I wouldn't be surprised if you took the Commanders, but I'm going with Atlanta.
Yeah, this one's interesting because now it's a primetime matchup and it's rookie quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels has been on fire. He had that huge victory against the Eagles. He threw 5 touchdown passes. Michael Penix is only going to be making his second start for the Falcons, who are leading the division. So this looks like it's going to be a really good game. I like the late season primetime games that really matter. So it's nice for them to flex stuff and change stuff around. Atlanta needs to win to stay on top of the division. Washington needs to win to stay in line for a wild card spot. There's a lot on the line in this one. I will say last week, I think Atlanta had a little bit of an easier game. So maybe they come into this one a little fresher than Washington because Washington had a hard-fought game against the Eagles. But Dan Quinn, the Commanders head coach, I'm sure he wants to beat the Falcons because this is his first game back since the Falcons let him go a few years ago. So I am actually going to be going with the Commanders in this one.
And we'll see how it goes. And then Monday Night Football, which is the game we've been discussing all day, and we don't pick those, Detroit at San Francisco. So yep, we'll end the week there. Hopefully that game matters because that would mean the Packers had beat the Vikings and we can have some online, stay up and get the number 1 seed. How excited. Then I won't be able to sleep. So you're watching all the playoff scenarios and everything go through. And speaking of that, so obviously next week our podcast will be a day late just because we're not going to record on Monday night because the game will be going on. So we'll do it on Tuesday and then release on Wednesday. And then we're kind of playing with how we're going to do next week. It depends on how much the game matters. Are we going to have a guest on? How are we going to do things? We'll figure that out next week, but we'll probably release that on Thursday like we normally would. So our release schedule next week is going to be Wednesday and Thursday, as at least how it stands right now. All right, Jacob, it's time for our grit guarantee.
It's time for the grit guarantee.
I go first, or you want me to go first?
I'll go first. I have a different. I don't think I've had this as my guarantee at all this year. I'm going to say that Sam Laporta catches at least 5 passes.
All right.
I think the 49ers are going to have to make some things up in their defense. They're going to have to try to prevent Gibbs from having a huge day. And I think that results in maybe some of these linebackers or safeties being out of position, maybe some miscommunication. And I'm going to say Laporta gets at least 5 catches.
Yeah, Laporta has been definitely more part of the offense in the last couple of weeks, whether that's him becoming healthy, him getting just things have been opening up. I'm not sure, but I like what he's going to be for this team for the rest of the season and in the playoffs. I think he's going to be a big player for us for the rest of the season on offense. So I like your pick there, Jacob. Mine is, I haven't done this one yet, too. I think the Lions are going to cover the spread. It's 3.5 right now. I think they're going to cover that, and I think it's going to be more. I think that they're going to just want to go out with vengeance. Whether this means anything as far as playoffs or anything, I think the Lions are going to have a Cowboys-type game. So you're betting, bet the Lions
hope so.
and the points. So yeah, it's good. I'm glad your Christmas was good, Jacob. And yeah.
Same?
Yeah. I had to go to work this morning, so it was a quick turnaround for me. It's always weird going back to work after Christmas just because everything's shut down at our work and then we come back into a fresh day. But
A full day behind.
Yeah, full day behind. It's what it feels like, but it's worth it. Got to spend a lot of good time with my family. And
Awesome.
I like your Lions gear back there. So, oh man, Caleb Williams just goes down. Terrible. Like a 15-yard sack. But anyways, go Bears this week. I'm trying to catch up to you. I don't have very much time to catch up to you. So this season, so we'll see if I can get my grit picks up. But I don't know. But
We don't say go Bears. You root for them silently. If you say go, I'll quit the podcast right now.
No, definitely not going to say that. I'm not
We
even
root for them quietly. We want them to win.
I know it's going to be so tough on Sunday, but I am not going to be the only Lions fan rooting for them, and I'm sure. I wonder if Amon-Ra is going to wear his Green Bay Sucks shirt on Sunday. Do you think?
Right.
He's going to
Keep
have
that one
to.
in the bag for that one day.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, Jacob. For Talking Grid, I'm Jason. He's Jacob. Let's go Lions.